We want to let you know of today's speakers. Joining us on the call today is Mike Caruso, who is the CCC MyPath product manager. David Williams, who is the Vice President of Client Services from ENSI, will be on the line discussing Career Coach. We also have Julia Argai, Manager of Software Integration, the Student Success and Support Program from Sierra College, who will be discussing Sierra College's decision to choose MyPath and their experiences with implementation. As I mentioned earlier, my name is David Quintanilla, the Enabling Services Training Coordinator. And our agenda is as follows here. Mike will take us through an overview of MyPath. Dave Williams will come on to talk about Career Coach. And then Julia will share the Sierra College implementation discussion, and then we'll go into Q&A at that point. Just to let you know, these are some of the learning objectives that we were seeking to fulfill with today's webinar. We also want to make sure that you have an opportunity to get any questions you may have about the product answered. I don't want to go through and read the slide for you, so just know that we will be hitting these points during the course of today's webinar. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Caruso to discuss CCC MyPath. Mike, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Great. Can you guys hear me okay, Q?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. We're very happy you could take some time out of your afternoon to come and listen to some information about CCC MyPath and some of the tools that it comes bundled with. We'll get straight to the point. I'd like to make sure that I'm sure a lot of folks here have heard about MyPath, so we'll cover some of the main points, and I want to make sure that we get the chance to hear from Dave and from Julia, who have a much more valuable, probably, perspective than I do. So just really briefly, before I take over the screen share and start showing you guys what the MyPath interface looks like, I want to make sure that we get the opportunity to talk about the problem statement that really kind of drives what it is that MyPath does. So this is a statistic that I usually use when we do individual college presentations. And it's one that surprisingly not a lot of people have heard, so it may come as news to some of the folks on the call. But we did an analysis in the last 4 to 6 months or so of all of the electronic applications that come into the system. So these are all applications that have been successfully submitted.
Mike, sorry to interrupt you. We aren't able to see your screen.
Yeah, I'm not sharing anything yet.
Oh, okay, just checking. Everyone was concerned in the chat, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's coming soon. We'll do a screen share here in just a second. So for now, you just have to listen to me talk. I'm sorry.
No worries.
So as I was saying, we did an analysis of all of the electronic applications that come into the system. So bear in mind that these are applications that were successfully submitted. So students who made it all the way through CCCApply, made it to the last page, filled in all their information, pushed submit, sent the application off. Of that total population of applications, I believe that we are now up to fully 75% of those applicants do not then enroll in classes. So that's a pretty astounding number, right? It's more than 1.5 million total students who have sat all the way through CCCApply, told us in the terms that are the strongest ones available to them that they are interested in coming to college, and those students, 75% of them, don't then enroll in classes. So that, I think, probably means that there are a number of different things that we as a system can be doing to help solve for that problem. And one of those things is using CCC MyPath to help bridge the gap between the application and the enrollment for our incoming students. So now I'll go ahead and take over the screen share. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit and very briefly about what MyPath is and how it helps to sort of solve for that particular issue. So in examining the student experience as they go through this application process, this is a fresh student, somebody we don't know anything about, a student who is not a part of the California Community College system at all. They go into a college website, generally is where they start. They click on whatever the apply button is, wherever that is. Every college has their own website with their own location for this. They go through the application, Generally, that takes anywhere between 15 and 25 minutes on average, is what I'm given to understand from the CCCApply team. They fill out an absolute ton of information about themselves, right? All kinds of things. And once they're done, they get a page where they submit their application, and we give them a message that says, "Thank you for your application. We'll get back to you soon." And that, is a pretty obvious problem, and very clearly is a little bit of a bummer for the student, because as we talked about, they just sat through 25 minutes of a web form and told us, "Hey, I really want to come to college here." And the best we can do for them in a lot of cases is tell them, "Thank you, we'll get back to you soon." What happens next is generally up to each college. They retrieve that data from the application, they process it into their local systems, and then they trigger out a set of next steps to that student, generally by way of email. And we expect them, or hope, that they will kind of go digging for that email, maybe in a day or two when it shows up, and follow whatever those instructions are, right? So there's a huge hole in the funnel for incoming students where we take them through this form, they tell us about themselves, and then we basically tell them to go away for a couple of days while we deal with their information and give them a next set of instructions. So hopefully that kind of sets the table for what I think is a big problem in terms of making sure that we're maximizing the number of students that we're giving ourselves the opportunity to help with the community college system. And hopefully MyPath is something we can kind of plug into that gap and help to stay engaged with those students and make sure that they're getting as much information as they can possibly get to make sure that they're successful. So the way MyPath works is that we are integrated with CCCApply, right? So what you can choose to do is turn on MyPath for your incoming students immediately post-application. So when you implement MyPath, what happens is, instead of that page that says "Thank you for applying," and then nothing happens after that, that page changes in the application to say, "We got your information, but you're not done yet. Your college, whatever the name of your college is, has an onboarding process for you to begin." And they can immediately jump into MyPath so that they can begin whatever set of steps you think are applicable for your incoming students. So here we're looking at just a sample account that I have. This is just a demo college. So this is all just fake information that I've filled in here. Keep in mind that all of this is completely customizable for your college. So up here where you see CCC Demo College, obviously your name would go there, your logo, the bar can be colored, whatever color you want, whatever fonts you want to be put there. This image that's rotating through a series of sort of stock photos can be photos of your students, your campus, whatever you need to make it feel like a part of your brand and a part of your college's experience, right? But the meat and the potatoes of the experience is here. These are what we call the advisor cards. And this is how you basically communicate to your students, these are the steps that I want my incoming students to go through, right? And this is where you can give them access to information that will help them to be successful. So as we sort of developed the first version of this user interface, which is what you're seeing here, we talked to a lot of community college students from across the state. And what we found almost unanimously among these students, and keep in mind that they're of varying backgrounds, right? We talked to young students, old students, students of economic means, and those without, people who are comfortable with technology and those who are not. What we found as a common thread amongst all of them was that they dislike the experience of being dropped into a new sort of web tool and then being expected to figure out where they need to go, what they need to do, in what order they're expected to be doing things, all those types of issues that you might run into when you get exposed to a very complex web tool. And so what we did was we built MyPath to be extremely prescriptive, right? That's the key word here. We want to make sure that we're telling the student, here are a set of tasks that you're being asked to do. Here's where you can go to do them, and here's the order you can go to do them in. And so what you actually have the opportunity to do here is, you can imagine for a student who has just pushed submit on their application, you can actually give them access to financial aid information if that's what you want them to be reading about. You can give them access to career exploration tools if that's what you want them to be doing. You can give them information about your campus, your sports teams, your student life. Really, the opportunities are endless, and it's totally configurable for you. Each of these cards here, orientation, explore careers, these are just samples, right? You can actually have your first card say veteran services if you want. You could have your first card say new students, and then give some information that's like an overview of your campus. Whatever tasks are on that card, again, totally configurable. We want to make sure also that we're tracking what it is that the student has done and what they have yet to do. So we visually communicate to them, hey, these 2 cards are done, but this 3rd card here has an open task remaining. Why don't you go ahead and take care of that, right? In terms of where the tasks point, you can, of course, embed information in MyPath. So you can put pages in MyPath very easily. It does not require IT resources. We give you a very Microsoft Word-like interface to put information into MyPath. And you can actually put, financial aid resources or whatever you want them to be reading about just in MyPath itself. Or you can take these links, these tasks, and point them to your own local site as well. If you have resources that are already built out in other places and you just want to start making sure that you're exposing them to your students, you're guaranteeing that students are going to see them on the way in, basically. Now, one of the things that we all know is that there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all onboarding process, right? We know that there is no possible way that you could configure 8 tasks that will be equally applicable to every single one of your incoming students. And obviously, if you think about it, we just learned a ton about the student who's arrived at MyPath because they just applied to college, right? They just filled out a ton of information about themselves. And so MyPath also has an integration with CCCApply's underlying data. So we get that application data instantly, sooner than colleges do in almost all cases. And so what you can actually do is you can write rules that will then reorient or reorganize the onboarding steps for your students based on their application inputs, right? So you could write a rule that says, if a student indicated on their application that they're a veteran, I actually don't want the first step to be orientation. I want it to be learn about veteran services at my campus. And then you can link them to information about that. Or if they need childcare services, or if their English is a second language, or whatever things we're learning about a student, you can configure MyPath to respond to those inputs from the student and create a custom onboarding pathway for that student that is unique to every student, right? And that's advantageous for your students in 2 ways. It makes them feel like it's a personalized experience, like we're catering to them and we're giving them exactly what they need. And it's also not wasting the time of students who don't need certain pieces of information, right? So if a student indicates, for example, they're interested in athletics and you want to give them athletics information, that's only a small percentage of your incoming students. So you can basically dedicate a portion of the real estate on screen here to that student via a rule, but the rest of your students who are incoming who don't need that information won't see it, right? So you're basically creating an onboarding experience that's tailored to every individual student. We know, again, that oftentimes it can take a day or 2 for a college to process a student's application data and to trigger out the next steps, right? And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that MyPath is able to do is stay as sort of kind of be a sticky experience, right? We want to make sure that students are continually being prompted to come back, re-engage with the system, re-engage with your college, and try to create the highest likelihood that they will then proceed to an enrollment, right? And so one of the things that MyPath comes complete with is also a communications engine. So MyPath is able to send emails, it's able to send text messages, it's able to send messages to the user's inbox, which is in MyPath. And that way, what you can do is constantly remind students, hey, there are unfinished tasks here in MyPath. Why don't you come back and complete them? It's very simple to turn those on. It's really actually literally just a checkbox in the MyPath advisor or in the MyPath administrator tool. And it will automatically read what the student's communications preferences are. So if they've opted into text messages, if they've opted into email communications, and it will trigger out communications to those students based on what those preferences are, right? So if, for example, a student comes to MyPath after completing the application, maybe they finish the first 2 steps and they have a 3rd one that's incomplete, MyPath can send out automated reminders after a day, after 2 days, after a week to try to keep reaching out to that student, bringing them back, keeping them engaged, and hopefully making sure that they don't kind of disappear off into the void where we think a lot of the 75% of students are going, right? As it is right now, a student can complete an application and they don't hear anything from us until the student or until the college processes that data, creates the record in their SIS and reaches out. MyPath is now a way to create that interstitial experience that sits between the application and the enrollment to try to keep them coming back, staying engaged, and getting them information that is unique to them that will create the highest likelihood of success. Before I hand it over to Dave next, I also want to make sure that I mention that if you choose to, you can also use MyPath before the application, right? So one of the concerns that we've heard from a number of colleges is I don't think that I'm getting the best responses in the application that I could, because I don't think that my students are always well researched. Right? I don't think that they always know what kind of program of study they're interested in. I don't think they always know what financial aid resources they need, because this is the first time, or the application is the first time they've seen these questions, right? Or considered these things. So you can actually also choose to create a pathway prior to the application where you expose them to things like the career coach tool that you'll see here in a minute. You can imagine if they've gone through a robust career exploration opportunity before the application, that you might be able to trust what they say on that program of study input question, because they have gone through an experience that has told them, hey, here are the kind of careers that are right for you. And so, they're giving kind of real answers in the application that they might not otherwise. We also recognize that some colleges don't necessarily want to add clicks before, that might inhibit students from submitting applications. And so you're not forced to do that by any stretch of the imagination. You can use MyPath before, you can use it after, or you can use it kind of in a bookend implementation, around the application. Okay, so I've said a lot of things and spoken a lot here. I want to make sure that we give Dave and Julia some time. So Dave, I think you are up.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Mike. Dave Williams, are you ready to go ahead and begin your portion? Okay, we can see your screen.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name's Dave Williams. I'm a part of the management team here at EMSI. I'm glad to see such a big crowd here today. It's fantastic, the work that Mike and co are doing around MyPath. There's obviously a high amount of demand for the problem that they're trying to solve, making it easier for students to enroll in your institutions, and we are playing our small part in making that happen. I wanted to take a quick second or two and introduce you all to EMSI and who we are. We are a data and software company that's been in the higher education space for, going all the way back to 2001. So I've been here for about 10 years, and we work with mostly two-year community and technical colleges around what programs they ought to offer based on the needs of their community. And more importantly, connected to the conversation today, how do we empower students with the right data to cast a compelling career vision? So a lot of the things that the EPI initiative is pushing on right now, making the barriers to enrollment in the higher education system in California lower. We feel that career exploration, career vision, having a compelling career goal at the end of your educational life cycle is a big part to lowering those barriers. So I wanted to throw our website up here so you all can see a little bit about who we are and what it is that we do. There's a number of programs that we can help with, but student success is a big part of that, giving them good solid data to make what are really high leverage decisions and personal decisions for themselves. So as I had mentioned earlier, we see the career data as being integral to the student as they make a decision on what sort of education to pursue, and thereby what career they will get. There's been multiple studies out there that show the percentage of students that are pursuing higher education because they want to have a better career. And I think the stats are something like 3 out of 4 students that are out there are doing this solely to go get a better job. So we better equip them with the intelligence they need to make the right decisions so that their investment in higher education is a good one. And that's that idea there has really what has caused us to focus on a product like Career Coaches, which is what you're seeing on your screen right now. So Career Coach is designed to build a bridge between a student and their aspirations, their skills, both soft and hard skills, what they are best suited to pursue as a career, and connect those things with the actual labor market. What careers map well to those skills, to those innate attributes that they possess that would make them a fit for a certain career path. We are trying to build the bridge between what the regional community and economy might need and what a student or a job seeker is prepared to give. So we're trying to make that connection as solid as we can. We're also making a second connection, which ultimately is your programs train for what jobs. So how can we draw a connection between the programs someone might be pursuing at your college and the job that they can go use that education to pursue? So we are ultimately trying to draw the connection between the student and the labor market and your programs and the labor market. So we're going to demonstrate a little bit of that here. So Career Coach is primarily made up of 3 components that you can see really easily here on the homepage. There's the career assessment, and then we allow a user to browse both career categories and program categories, usually using the keyword search options right here. Now, when we are encouraging students to go through Career Coach and to start exploring careers, we encourage them first to take the assessment. So we'll start there. So we'll go take an assessment, and we have allowed 2 different assessments. There's a really robust kind of comprehensive assessment that is 60 questions long. Now that may seem over the top to you, and I would probably agree for the most part. It's very robust though, and will spit out much better and much more accurate information on the other end should someone take the time to do it. Now, most often it does not take more than 2 to 2.5 minutes to complete. So it isn't a huge ask, but if someone doesn't have that much time, which we really don't here today, we'll choose the 6-question assessment and go through there. So let's go through here. Let's see, you would like to work hands-on, be outside, use your physical ability. Sure, I agree with that. You would like to observe, learn, analyze, evaluate, and solve problems. I'll strongly agree with that. I do not express myself very creatively. I'll disagree with that. Do I like to teach people? Yes, I definitely like to do that. And influence people? Sure, that sounds good. Work with numbers and facts and details. I'm going to say I'm unsure to that one. So we've answered our 6 questions. We get a summary of what our top traits are based on the results of the assessment, and then a list of top career matches. So based on the answers to my questions, we are now connected to a list of career categories that we can now go explore. And I'll start with health science. We'll click on that and go to greater levels of detail, have a few clicks. And now I am connected with careers, actual jobs that I would be a good fit for based on my answers to the assessment. So we can scroll down here and see a few of these. And one that looks good to me, diagnostic medical sonographer. And a couple of things to note here. There are some summary data points on the card that describe sort of the lay of the land for diagnostic medical sonographers. So it gives us an annual wage followed by what the average level of education by workers in that field currently have achieved. So I'm going to click on that to get a bit more detail. And this is going to take us to a page entirely dedicated to that particular career, a diagnostic medical sonographer. This is usually the point where I stop and also explain where this data is coming from. So we've built Career Coach within MyPath to be able to understand and know where a user is originating from. If based on a student's MIS code, I believe is how it works, we are able to tie their location back to a specific region so that the data they're viewing in Career Coach will always be for the region that they are originating from. Now, we're not doing that in this case because I am not a user and it does not recognize me according to any one of the 16 regions that we have available in Career Coach. So this isn't regionally specific. This is for the entire state of California. I want to draw your attention to the map on the right-hand side.
Hey, Dave,
that, yeah, go ahead.
do you mind zooming in a little bit? It's a little bit difficult to see what on the screen.
Yeah, let me try doing that right now. So how about that, Q? Is that a little better?
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, great. So this map on the right-hand side that I'm circling my mouse around allows you to load up to 16 regions within the state of California, and the MIS code that a user or that the system recognizes from a user will tie that user back to the region that they are originating from. So, which will make the data as regional as possible and as useful as possible to the end user. Now, that's not true in this case because I do not have an MIS code. I am not a student in California. Therefore, it will not know which region to tie me to, and it will automatically bring us back to the state of California. So the data we're seeing here is for the entire state. But if you had Career Coach as a part of your MyPath implementation, it would know to connect your students via their MIS code back to your particular region or whatever your region your college is within. Again, I wanted to make you all aware of that. So there's some summary data points that we've seen. There's a nice high median salary here. There's a good bit of job openings, not as much as you would like to see across the state, but for any one of these data points, we can go in and see way more detail by clicking on the individual tabs above the data. So we have an overview. We have the About tab, which is going to give us a description of what is required of diagnostic medical sonographers, as well as a national view of what level of educational attainment you need to typically have in order to be a diagnostic medical sonographer. In this case, an associate's degree is by far and away the biggest category for that particular occupation. We can look at a wage curve over time. And lastly, we can see employment trends, both by job postings and by employers, and then by actual structural labor market data. So we can have an idea of what the demand currently and what the projected demand will be for this occupation over time. And in this case, it looks very encouraging. Okay, so back to the overview section here. This is the critical piece that I wanted to demonstrate for you all today. Diagnostic medical sonographers is great, but how would somebody go about preparing themselves for that sort of career? Glad you asked. Below, we have the programs that have been mapped to that career available by institution. So we can, as a user, we can go through and see all of the institutions for our region. Remember, we are for the entire state of California, so this list is going to be very long, of programs and the institutions that are offering those programs that will train somebody to be a diagnostic medical sonographer. So I can click on this particular program, Advanced Cardiac Life Support, which is offered at Santa Rosa. I can see a general allied health program offered at these 4 institutions, Mendocino, Diablo, Columbia, and Canada. And we have a number of programs all the way down. So someone can come in and immediately see what sort of options they have based on what region they're in for the programs that they can explore and prepare themselves for this particular career. And so if we click on one of those just to demonstrate, we can go to Santa Rosa Junior College, and we can see the types of programs the types of careers you can pursue with that program. Not only diagnostic medical sonographers, but it turns out that there is another career as well, radiologic techs that are connected back to that program, along with wages and further data on that particular career. Now, there is a good bit of customization and configurability within this. We can actually link back to we can link back to the homepage of your website that will drive the user back there to find out more information on the program. We are hoping soon to have more specific information that will be more tailored to your program, perhaps even be able to direct a user back to the program page that sits on your institution's website. Now, I've gone on for long enough, and I know we're limited on time. So, Q, that's what I have as far as demonstration goes of Career Coach. So back over to you.
Thank you very much, Dave. And now let's go ahead and turn it, if you wouldn't mind stopping sharing your screen. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Julia from Sierra College. Julia, are you able to come on the line? I know she mentioned she had to pick up her phone, so I'll just give her a moment. And while she's doing that, just a reminder, if you have any questions during any point of the presentation, please make sure you use the chat box in order to go ahead and place them to us. Julia, are you available?
I am. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why we chose to implement MyPath, what brought us there, how our experience was, and what we hope to do moving forward with it. And it's good that we just heard from MC, because that was actually the genesis of our implementation, was looking into possibilities for tools to help our students with career exploration. There we go. So you heard a lot about what MyPath can do, so I'll try to go over those slides quickly. But I'll talk a little bit about how we think it's going to help our students. The primary reason that the whole institution decided to agree to implement MyPath was it was an improved landing page after CCCApply. A lot of other reasons, but that was the primary reason we didn't have any disagreement about implementing it. And as you may be aware, there are a lot of different technologies that come in, opportunities for you to implement, and to be choosy, there's got to be a good reason and not a lot of objection right now. So this was the landing page. Some of you are familiar with this. If you haven't filled out a CCCApply application, I hope you'll do that, because it's good to have empathy for that student experience. This was the landing page that they got to, and our feedback was frequently that students would get to this page and then they would just close their browser. They weren't really sure that what this meant to them, or how to turn this into their next steps. Here is a direct quote. If you've been involved in some of the conversations around the improvements ongoing to CCCApply, you may have seen this before, but one of the students interviewed a few months ago said this. After they submitted it, they thought they should get an email right away. Talking to their friends, the friends had gotten theirs right away. In the long run, the student found out that their email in the application was wrong, so they ended up calling. They waited 2 weeks and thought, there's no way, and they were just thinking, I want to go to college. And so this is a common story that we hear from our applicants who, for whatever reason, fall through the cracks after they submit their application. So this is what it looks like now for a student after they finish their application to our college. This is that landing page that they get to. And I think it's easy to see that that's an improvement over this. So again, not a difficult conversation campus-wide to say, hey, are we okay turning this on? Because it goes from that screen to that screen. And so that was an easy thing. This is particularly the thing that we think is helpful for those students who were previously falling through the cracks. There's this didn't get a welcome email link. And if they click on it, it takes them currently to this page about our student onboarding center, where they can contact somebody. There's this particular page cycles through a few different things that can help the student and let them know who to contact. So here's some data about the usage of this in particular. Just since October 1st, we've gotten some measurements on this, and the reason why we're only looking back 2 weeks right now is that, as Mike described earlier, the navigation from the last part of the application when they finish submitting over to MyPath is much more obvious to the student than it used to be, and so many more of the students are actually proceeding to MyPath. It was far less than 50% before, and now, as you can see, it's almost all of the students. And then of those students who went over there, over 250 of them accessed that didn't get their welcome email. And so they were able to navigate to that information about our Student Help Center. And then over 200 students also access information about their financial aid eligibility. And those are two things that we think are very important for students to possibly think about right after they apply. So some other reasons we chose MyPath in particular, again, we were looking at a variety of technology tools. Most of them would cost us money and be quite complicated to implement. But there's default content available, so that makes it very easy to adopt. Each MyPath implementation is customizable by the college, which is very important. The easy click and drag admin interface makes it, again, easy to assign somebody as the content manager for this. The ability to target the advice cards to students based on things in their application, as Mike mentioned previously, was very attractive. And then for it to be branded to our college versus something that looks like it's a statewide thing. And as you probably know, students are often confused about, well, what's the difference between applying to the college and the CCCApply thing, especially a student who's only applied, this is the first college they've applied to, they've never seen this before, so it can be a bit confusing to them. I'll show you a little bit of the default content in case you haven't seen it. Makes it really easy to get up and going. One of these is the financial aid eligibility page. So if you just accept that default content in one of your advice cards, it takes the student to a page that looks like this, has some pretty good information for the student, and there are actually quite a few pages to choose from. This is one of the ones that we are still using and sending students to. We want them to figure out if they should apply for the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, or if they're not going to apply at all. Here is an example of how we customize that Pay for College advice card. There's eligibility was already there. The apply now for FAFSA was one of the options, I believe, already there. But we recently added this, or apply now for DREAM Act. And the student, it can simply click on eligibility, determine if they're eligible for FAFSA, and if they're not, they may be eligible for DREAM Act. Here is another example of some custom content. We want to use our mobile app as a tool to onboard students, to give them push notifications about their next step in the onboarding process. So we're hoping that as soon as they're done with the application, that they go ahead and download the app. And we're seeing good numbers even in the last 2 weeks of students clicking on that after they finish the application. So I mentioned before the easy click and drag admin interface. It looks just like this. Click on the edit button if you want to add a card to one of the existing. Then you go here, just hit add for your new task. You enter a title, description, a URL if you choose to, and the expected duration. This option we like because if you want the student to have one-click experience, you can launch from dashboard. So the thing that you want, you could have one advice card, and if you want the student simply just to go to a certain page on your website where you have a lot more information, then they can go directly there without having to stop at an additional page. Or if you want to tailor that experience a little further, you can open it in a new window or tab. So here's what it looks like. I just showed you how we added one. This other important step I just added is now showing up in the advice cards for the student. Very easy to do. And then if you, like I mentioned, you have that launch from dashboard option, or you can open in a new window. If you don't click launch from dashboard, it takes the student to a second screen where each of the steps are outlined, and the links are right there. If you have a link, it tells the student how long it's going to take and the description of the new step that you just added. So as mentioned, you can brand it with your college logo and college image. One thing that's really nice is the feedback on the completed items. So as a student progresses through, again, you can have 4 cards showing at a time or fewer, but as they complete items, it's evident to them that they've done that. We like that the next step is clear. It's not checked. It's still a bullet point to be done. And then a couple of things just that guided our implementation. We've been trying to use discipline in all of our communications and all of our user interfaces with students as we refine them. We try to use one and only one next step for the student. We try to give immediate feedback on the step that they just completed whenever possible. We try to use clear language, and we aim for a 9th grade reading level maximum. We try to link to information rather than displaying text whenever possible. Ideally, we'd like all of the content students see to be targeted to them based on what we know about them. And then, of course, the content that they see and when they see it should be relevant to where they are in the process and what they're trying to do. MyPath helps us to accomplish most of these things. So advice I would have for other colleges who are considering implementing MyPath is not to wait. There's really no harm in doing this. It simply improves that landing page for the student, and you can make further enhancements from there. Because there's so much default content available and even those suggested advice cards to start with, you could go live with it and have an immediate improvement with very little work by your college. You can use some of those interest cards that your institution agrees on. All students might want to know about 1, 2, 3 things, and put those advice cards in to get started. Get feedback from students after they start using it, and if you have onboarding staff or if you have enrollment specialists or outreach, they'll definitely be able to give you that feedback as students go through the process. And then lastly, just put some kind of plan in place to review the usage of that. Hopefully also get those reports from the tech center like we've been doing, and then use that to tailor and improve your content over time. So one thing I wanted to mention next, we're hoping to enhance our implementation by leveraging the data that's in CCCApply to tailor those cards to students. The reason we haven't done that yet is there's decisions to be made, and we haven't invested a lot of time in making those decisions. But there's a lot of value in doing that, so that will be what we plan to use as our next phase. This has just been a limitation on our side to have those meetings and to make those decisions and recommendations. But the product has future enhancements, which we're also hoping to use. Once the two-way integration is available, we intend to send our students back over to MyPath for certain activities, and then we can get the data back from MyPath about those activities. There's quite a few things. Placement changes because of AB 705 is one example where we might leverage features that within MyPath rather than trying to build something in-house ourselves. There's actually quite a bit of functionality in the MyPath product that we aren't using yet, so we're going to look at using that more and more over time. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Julia. That was a great presentation. So let's go ahead and turn it over to questions from the chat. I see that Mike has been very active in getting to your questions, but I'll go ahead and just reread and then just ask if you wouldn't mind repeating the answers just for those who aren't able to access the chat. The first question that was asked was, is the measurement that Julia is showing available from within MyPath? And Mike, I know you answered that, but would you mind repeating your answer?
Yeah, let me just scroll back up here. So I believe actually the first two questions in here are about reporting. So yes, we do have a reporting suite. All this data is sent to and stored in a project called the Data Warehouse. Our reporting is tied to that. And part of the MyPath implementation will include getting you access to those reports. And then you can run them for yourself whenever. And if there are things that the reporting is not showing you that you are curious about, I think Julia would be able to tell you oftentimes you can just reach out to my team and we can help you get to those kind of statistics.
Okay. And I believe that also answers the task completion status, those types of things. And then let's see. The next one is, how would you use MyPath with AB 705?
Oh, actually, you know what? There's one more, I think, before that about just-in-time nudging.
Yes.
Okay, so that one is kind of a multifaceted response.
Okay.
So the two-way data integration that Julia mentioned will basically provide individual student statistics that are tied to CCCID to your college if you want to get involved in that project. So you can actually power your own communication systems locally with status information that we send to you. We do also have built-in sort of just-in-time nudging that is tied to each of the tasks that are on the advisor cards. So there are automated reminders that you can enable that will understand what tasks are incomplete by a student, and then you set the schedule that those reminders are sent out on. The reminders include your college name, your branding, and links that point back to the task to help keep students engaged with whatever the next unfulfilled task is. Those reminders are sent via all of the communications channels that a student has opted into. So they'll go into the MyPath inbox, which I showed during my demo. They'll go via SMS if the student has opted to receive those. And they'll also go via email if the student has opted to receive that.
Perfect. Okay. And then it looks like then the next question would be how you would use MyPath with AB 705.
Okay. So we are working with the Multiple Measures Initiative to be able to we have some features and enhancements that are coming in the future for MyPath that we're still talking about with the Chancellor's Office in terms of how we can help support AB 705. The first and most obvious one might be rendering student placement data as a page in MyPath that you can optionally enable. All those things are still being discussed actively, and we hope to have more information about that soon. But it is an active topic of conversation with our group.
Okay, great. And that appears to be all the questions in the chat so far. Let me go ahead and go through the last bit of information we have and allow people a little bit more time if they have any additional questions to go ahead and take advantage. I want to let you know that if you are interested in speaking with someone about MyPath and getting a demo scheduled, we'd encourage you to use the email address listed on the screen here. Within the Tech Center, we have a group entitled Enabling Services, which I'm a part of, and we have specific college relationship managers that are available to answer your questions specific to your institution. And so we would encourage you to reach them at the email address listed there. The website also listed on the screen, in addition to containing all of the webinars, also contains a bunch of different information about MyPath, including some professional development modules, which take the user guide and break it down into 4 videos. And we'd encourage you to look at that. And also, we'd like to let you know about our user community that we have available at the link down at the bottom, where you can ask questions and get answers from not only Tech Center staff like Mike, but also from users within the community. And it looks like there was another question that came in in the chat. Mike, I know you just answered it, but I'll go ahead and read it out for those who aren't able to receive chat. The question was, how many colleges are currently in the process of implementation?
Yep, great question. So we have 30 colleges right now that are either live or who are in one of the various implementation phases. I do want to call attention to the fact that implementation can be as fast as you would like it to be. We provide technical resources that will help you take care of the few technical steps that are required to enable MyPath. We'll give you training, we'll give you materials to help your admins understand how to use MyPath. I want to stress that it does not really require your IT department necessarily if they're too swamped. Generally, the product can be administered by non-technical staff. Really, you can go live basically as fast as you would like to configure MyPath, so to speak. If you want to have a hugely complex experience for your students, then it can take you a while. But if you want to start with something that's like a simple onboarding process, you can get that up and running in a week or so. We can talk more about that if your college would like to set up an individual call.
And Mike, there was a request for you to put in a plug for a users group. I know you have a weekly meeting that you work with, correct?
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. That's a great plug. Few things. Basically, we run a bi-weekly call where all of the colleges who are either live or who are implementing can come and sort of bounce ideas off of each other. My entire development team is there, so if there are questions that you have about the way things work, we can help you get answers that you need. You can kind of see what other colleges are doing and see if there's any ideas that you want to adopt for your own MyPath account. And also, we use that as a method to collect feedback about the product in terms of powering our own roadmap. Because as I mentioned earlier in the chat, we are actively, continually adding features to MyPath. We have a lot of really exciting tools and stuff that are coming soon. For example, we have a refreshed user interface that looks even better than the one we already have. We're going to implement some tools that will allow you to collect documents from your students as a part of the post-application process, which I'm given to understand is particularly attractive for colleges with a large volume of international student applications. And all of those ideas are things that we glean from the colleges themselves, right? We don't just dream up ideas that we think would be cool. We kind of try to build what the colleges are looking for MyPath to be able to do. And similarly, I'm going to plug this myself. Coming up pretty soon here, we're going to actually reform our MyPath work group as well, which is going to be aimed solely at helping us to continue to build out a set of features that will be added to MyPath. So if that's something you're interested in participating in, please, by all means, let me know, and I would love to get you involved. Q, I'll just go ahead and read this next one. Any plan to integrate with e-transcripts or high school transcript data? Yes, there are actively plans to do so. That's actually part of our project with the multiple measures team. So, I will respond to this the same way that I responded to the 8705 question earlier, which is as soon as those specifics get hashed out, I would love to share them with the group. And the best way to get that information is to join that work group that I talked about earlier, because that's how we'll decide we want to make use of that data.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and just pause for about a minute or so to let any additional questions that may come up, but also just remind you that if you're looking to review a recording of this webinar, which I would highly encourage you to do, especially for the Sierra College portion. That was very informative. We want to let you know to go to this website here. And it looks like I think we've answered all the questions. So I would like to thank you all for joining us today for our webinar. And we wish you a great afternoon. Thank you.